started since we're just after 2 o'clock Eastern Time. My name is Brandon. I am the Marketing Director here at QuoteWerks. Today we're going to be doing a webinar between QuoteWerks and QuickBooks. So we're going to show you the integration points, what's available. There are some new features that we've added in version 4.9, so we'll make sure we cover those. And then we'll also go through briefly on kind of where you can set that up. If you are looking for specific instructions on setting up the integration, we have a lot of information on the website, and I'll show you where you can find that information as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to do a short PowerPoint presentation of the new and existing features, so basically the integration points between QuoteWerks and QuickBooks. I'll show you the new features that we've added over the last few months. Most of them are going to focus on the purchasing side in QuickBooks. And then also we'll show you where the resources available for setting up these integrations are available on the website. So I know it's one thing that's pretty important is how do you actually use these integrations, how do you set them up. We have a lot of information on the website that's available to be reviewed and used. So some of the new versions some of the new features in version 4.9 are going to include the ability to assign your PO numbers in QuickBooks. So we've been able to create purchase orders in QuickBooks for a while, but we haven't been able to actually manually assign the purchase order number. That's something that a lot of users had requested. So that is available in the latest version where you can actually put in your purchase order number. You do also have the option to use the QuickBooks purchase order number. So that's something else that we had already done by default, but now you can actually make the choice. So if you leave that purchase order number field blank, we'll just use the next auto number in QuickBooks for that purchase order number. The purchase order numbering sequence is also set now in QuoteWerks, so you can actually use a sequence so you don't have to remember it. So if you decide you want to use the QuoteWerks numbering sequence for those purchase orders, you'll be able to do that. We also have the option to set your default purchase order integration. So before, you would just be able to only export to QuickBooks, but if you decide that you're going to use QuickBooks maybe for creating your estimate, sales orders, and invoices, but you need to create your purchase order in another CRM or PSA like AutoTask or ConnectWise, you'll have that option where you can still create those initial documents in QuickBooks, but then create the purchase order in ConnectWise or AutoTask instead. And then one of the newest features that we've added is going to be the ability to receive those items in QuickBooks when you create the purchase order from QuoteWerks. So if we create that purchase order in QuickBooks, we'll be able to actually mark those items as received in QuoteWerks, and then we can sync those items receipts in QuickBooks. Oh, what's the wrong way there? So the QuickBooks integration is going to follow, there's going to be 5 major integration points for this. So we're going to have our contact integration. We're going to have our product integration, so we can integrate with the QuickBooks product item list. We have our document integration, where we can actually create estimate, sales orders, invoices, or purchase orders in QuickBooks. We have our PO support, which is fairly new, where we're going to be able to create that purchase order, mark those items as received, that type of stuff. And then we're also going to support payment information. So if you're using QuoteValley or want to use QuoteValley, or maybe you're just testing it out, seeing if it's going to fit your business, this is a really nice feature where we can actually link up with the QuickBooks payment merchant service, so the Intuit merchant services, and actually receive payments through QuoteValley, and then we can actually take those electronic payments and submit them to QuickBooks. If you're using one of the other gateways we support, you'll still be able to submit that payment over to QuickBooks as well. The contact integration is going to be twofold. We're going to be able to pull that contact information from QuickBooks into QuoteWerks, and then we're also going to be able to create that contact information from QuoteWorks into QuickBooks that customer doesn't currently exist. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that in order to use any type of integration with QuoteWorks and QuickBooks, you do have to have QuickBooks open and running. So a lot of you may be using QuickBooks just to, or the integration to send documents to QuickBooks from QuoteWorks, and not using the contacts. That's fine. If you use a CRM or PSA for your contacts and you're pulling your contacts in from there, that's fine. Just want you to let you know that that functionality is available if you ever needed or decided that's the way you wanted to manage your contacts was in QuickBooks and have QuoteWorks pull the contacts from there. Again, if you're already using a CRM or PSA that we integrate with to pull contacts, don't worry about this step. It's not something that you have to do or that needs to be done. Our product integration, we're going to be able to pull products directly from the QuickBooks item list. So if you do have items in QuickBooks, you'll be able to pull those directly into QuoteWorks. I already see I have one question asking if QuickBooks Online is supported. Not yet. it is something that we're looking at developing because we know that's kind of the way QuickBooks is going. So we are going to be working on getting an integration for QuickBooks Online, but it's not supported as of yet. We're going to be able to create those items in QuickBooks. So if you're exporting a document over to QuickBooks and the item does not exist, we'll actually prompt you to create that item and select the correct account for that item. It's going to be very important that whoever is exporting your documents over to QuickBooks is familiar with QuickBooks, so you wouldn't want it to just be typically a normal sales rep or someone that's not really sure how your items are set up in QuickBooks. You're going to want to make sure that it is someone that has some that is very familiar with QuickBooks and how your company is set up in there. And then the last one, updating existing items. This will allow you to update any current items in QuoteWorks that we're exporting over to QuickBooks. And so if the items already exist in QuickBooks, we'll just update them with any price changes. I do see a ton of questions coming in, so I will try to answer any of these questions that you type in there. If I don't get to your question or I read over it or I skip it just because I miss it, because I see probably there's a ton rolling in right now, I do apologize. This webinar is recorded. I know that's always a big question, so everyone always asks, yes, this webinar is recorded. We will post it on the website after the meeting. We will send out an email with that information. If I don't get to your question, we'll try to do a follow-up at the end of the meeting where we can get your contact information, and I'll have either one of the sales guys or tech guys reach out to you to make sure that all your questions are answered. We will pause here and let me just run through the questions real quick. Like I said, I know there's a lot of you have questions already, and I'll try to go through as many as possible. If I do miss it, I will pause. Someone's asking what versions of QuickBooks is supported. We do support QuickBooks Pro, Premier, and Enterprise. The latest version, 2014, all the way back to, I believe, 2006. So if you're using any of those versions in between, we're going to support all three. There are some limitations just based on the document creation. If you're using the Professional Edition, it doesn't have a sales order, so you won't be able to create sales orders, but that's just a function of QuickBooks at that point. If you were to upgrade to Premier or Enterprise, you will have that functionality. Someone's stating that they're not able to see the PowerPoint. Do check your GoToMeeting. Occasionally it will freeze, so just try to kind of refresh it and see if that helps if you're able to then view the PowerPoint slides. Tim asked if we can partially sync with QuickBooks. He'd like to keep his pre-sales process completely within QuoteWorks and only send to QuickBooks for actual sales invoices. Yes, Tim, that's a great question. You can choose to do exactly that. That is actually one of the preferred methods of using the integration between QuoteWorks and QuickBooks, is to just send your documents over to QuickBooks once the customer has actually received it. So that's a very good question. That is the preferred method for using the integration. Sylvia's asking if you create a customer or product in ConnectWise, does it go back to QuoteWorks and then you can create a PO from there? Yes, Sylvia, we can pull contact information from ConnectWise as well as items from ConnectWise. So if you're maintaining your contacts and products in ConnectWise, we'll be able to pull that information to QuoteWorks, create the quote for the customer, deliver it to the customer, and then we could create the PO off that document into QuickBooks for you. And I'm sorry, just give me a moment here while I'm reading through some of these other questions. So, a couple of your questions are going to be a little more advanced, which would take a little more time, so we'll get you in touch with tech support for some of these. Marley, that's not a problem. You can integrate with AutoTask for the quotings and items, and then you can go through QuoteWorks to basically would go from QuoteWorks to AutoTask to QuickBooks, which sounds like that would be your workflow. That's perfectly fine. At that point, you probably wouldn't be using the QuoteWorks integration to QuickBooks, but if you want to sit on the webinar and kind of see what the features are that might be available to you, you can check it out. But if you wanted to go from QuoteWorks to AutoTask to QuickBooks, that's perfectly fine. It'll work just fine that way. All right, so let's go ahead and continue here with the PowerPoint. So our document integration, which we've kind of touched on, we're going to be able to create those estimates, sales orders, invoices, and purchase orders in QuickBooks. So you're typically only going to create one of those 4 types of documents, because once we create that document in QuickBooks, we're going to essentially assume that we're done with that document in QuoteWorks, so you don't really want to update it anymore in QuoteWorks. You'll follow through in QuickBooks for the rest of that information. You'll also have the option to use the QuickBooks numbering sequence or the QuoteWorks document number. So if you'd rather use the whatever number comes up next in QuickBooks, that's fine. Or if you want to use the QuoteWorks document number so you can reference that for your QuoteWorks documents, you'll be able to do that. We also have our PO support that we added. This will allow you to create the new purchase orders in QuickBooks. This will also let you mark the items as received in QuickBooks. So if you create that purchase order from QuoteWorks, we then export that document into QuickBooks. You can then mark that item as received in QuoteWorks, and we'll actually update it in QuickBooks for you as well. So that's available for you also. And then the last integration point, you're going to be able to see the accept payment via QuoteValet. So if you are using QuoteValet, or if you're thinking about using QuoteValet, this is a great tool because you can actually export your payments from QuoteWorks to QuickBooks. We also do support Intuit as a payment processor that we integrate with. So you can actually, if you're already using Intuit's payment system to collect credit cards and you're using QuoteValet, you can set them up as a payment gateway in QuoteWorks or in QuoteValet, and then when your customer pays, we'll be able to export that document over to QuickBooks. Again, if you are having trouble seeing my screen, we're on the integration point slide. Looks like slide number 8. So if you do have an issue seeing it, you may just need to refresh your GoToMeeting login. You might have to log back out and log back in to see if it catches up. Again, we are recording this, so if you do miss something or you came in late and you missed the beginning of it, don't worry. We're going to post this on the website and send out an email with this link for everyone. So typically, in QuoteWorks, we get a lot of questions about the workflow and kind of what step do you use each system. So the first thing you're going to do in QuoteWorks is you're going to create your document. You're going to select your contact, build your quote out, select your contact, and get ready to deliver this document to your customer. So we'll select our products and services. Customer will accept or make payment, maybe both. We can then update the opportunity, which will, if you're using one of the CRM or PSAs we support, when that customer has accepted that quote, we can convert it to an order, which will update that opportunity as closed or won in that specific CRM or PSA. This then gives you the option to resource the product information. So if you need to check pricing and everything before you actually place the order, you can do that. Then the next one's going to be to place that online order. If you're not going to be placing the order online, that's fine. We can still create that purchase order in QuickBooks. We also do support Peachtree or Sage 50, AutoTask, and ConnectWise. So if you're going to be using the create purchase order for something else, maybe you want QuoteWorks to create the estimate sales order invoice in QuickBooks, but you need to create a purchase order in AutoTask or ConnectWise instead, you'll have that option. We can then track that order in QuoteWorks, which can then be marked as received and basically track those items and you can actually track it all the way to delivery and fulfillment. So it's going to be kind of a complete solution for you when you're using QuoteWorks in that type of workflow. Amber asked if QuoteValet will work with another payment processor. Yes, it will, Amber. We support about 80 different payment gateways. If you go to our website, I'll actually show you where you can check that out and see the specific gateways that we support. But there's about 80 different ones. So if you're using really any of the major ones, you'll probably be able to use QuoteValet and accept payments that way. So QuoteValet Web, this is a reporting engine for QuoteValet. So any of you that have used QuoteValet or using QuoteValet or have at least heard about it, this is going to provide you reporting information so you can actually see what your users are doing in QuoteWorks and the documents that they're sending out through QuoteValet. It's an interactive page, makes it very easy to quickly see kind of what's going on with your sales team. It does have a comparative analysis. You can kind of compare your reps against each other. So if you feel like one is kind of performing better than another one, or maybe you have 3 or 4 guys or girls that you expect to perform well and one person's not living up to those standards, you can actually compare them and kind of see what they're doing. It also does include a My Summary for the reps, so this would be more on the rep side, so they can actually see that information, kind of see what they're doing and kind of how they stack up. We then can include a status board. We actually have this in our office where it's on a 40-inch monitor, so our whole sales team can see all the documents that have been accepted and won. Very useful if you have people who are in and out of the office. That way you don't lose any orders. You'll have a tracking of all that information here. You also have your finds, so you can locate your documents inside QuoteValet. So if you want to look for a specific one, you can do that. Your inbox, which is going to be similar to the QuoteValet inbox or the QuoteValet dashboard in QuoteWorks. And then we also have our peer reviews and approvals that can be done via QuoteValet Web as well. So if you have QuoteValet, or if you're looking at QuoteValet Web, this functionality is already included at no additional charge. It's just part of your subscription. If you want a trial of QuoteValet, just let us know. We can set you up with a free trial as well. So the videos are going to be, we have a lot of website resources. The videos are great because the setting up the integration is going to walk you through step-by-step setting up the QuickBooks integration. So this is going to walk you through how to set up the integration, make sure everything is correct. By default, a lot of this information is already going to be set up for you, but you can change some of the settings. One of the biggest ones being able to change like the part number, how we record the part number in QuickBooks when we're creating items, so you can actually set that up. We do have a video that walks you through using the QuickBooks integration, so it's going to be similar to what we're doing today, but obviously this is going to be a little more interactive because you're going to be able to ask questions. And then we do have our PO support, so if you have questions about how our purchasing works specifically in between QuoteWerks and QuickBooks, you'll be able to set that up as well. And then we have a lot of other videos, so if you are using one of the other integrations or just have specific feature questions and you want to see how it's done, we have a lot of those videos on the website. We do have our online help file, so it's basically our online manual. It did replace our PDF manual, so if you're used to going to your help view manual in QuoteWorks, that has been replaced with the online help file. It's a lot easier to manage. It's a lot easier to find information and to use. So that's why we actually made the switch, and so I think you guys will be really happy with it. It's much easier to navigate than a 1,000-page PDF document, which is what we're having to maintain with our old PDF manual. And then it is searchable by keyword, and there is an index. So again, it's just going to make it that much easier to locate this information. Going back over a few questions, I see Deborah asked if what QuickBooks fields are matched to the QuoteWorks fields. For contacts, Deborah, it's going to be by like the job name or the company name is typically how we pull in that information. I'm not quite sure if you mean when we're writing to QuickBooks or when we're pulling from QuickBooks, but I'll show you how you can actually search for contacts that are in QuickBooks, and typically it's going to be by the job name or the company name, but we'll walk through that so you can see how that works. If you guys are going to be at any of the events coming up, we're going to be at IT Nation here in Orlando in November. We'll also be at some of the ASCII events. Actually, we have Jesse from our staff is at the ASCII Phoenix event. So if you're going to be there, make sure you stop by the booth. If there's any events that you think we'd be a good fit for that you'd like to see us at, send us an email to qwsales@quoteworks.com, and we'll take a look at it. We're always looking for new events and new partnerships, so let us know about it, and we'll be happy to take a look at it. Social media, obviously we're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with us there, post questions, comments. And then we also have our forums. It's not really social media, but it is on the website. So if you do want to connect with other QuoteWorks users or kind of see how other users are using the software, it's a great place to go. There's a lot of information. We have a lot of active partners and current customers on there, as well as a lot of times our tech guys will jump in there and help answer questions as well. So it's a really great place for information. All right, so let's go to the website first, and I'll just give you guys a chance to get caught up here with my screen. This is going to be very useful for locating any information about what we're kind of covering today, but really anything QuoteWorks related, as our website has a ton of information. So the first thing I want to let you know about are the videos. So if we click on support or just mouse over it, really, you'll be able to see a long list, and then you can click on videos, and this will actually load our videos page. The videos page is searchable by keywords. So if you want to search specifically for a QuickBooks related video, simply type in QuickBooks in your search bar here, and this will load all the QuickBooks videos associated with your search. Sorry, just reading over a couple questions. Adrian asked, are we able to integrate this with all versions of QuickBooks? Yes. We're going to work with Pro, Premier, and Enterprise. The only one we don't support currently is going to be QuickBooks Online. We are looking to add support for that here in the next few months. Not sure what development schedule is with that on the time, but if you want to send an email over to support, they can probably give you a little bit better answer. But yeah, if you're using Pro, Premier, Enterprise 2014 back all the way to 2006, you'll actually have full support for QuickBooks and the integration features. So the video is searchable by keyword, so that's going to be available for you here. We do have our help file again, so if you want to see the most recent version of the help file other than the one that comes with the software, simply click on the support link, and then you'll see there's a help system link. And you can click on that, and that'll bring you right to the help file. And again, it is searchable by keyword, or you can click on index. So if you look over to the left where it says contents, you can actually search here and then click on index, and you'll be able to search by keyword, or if you just want to see it again by an index, that's going to be available for you as well. All right. So your QuickBooks setup information is in here. You can go through, and this will walk you through, again, everything step by step of setting up the QuickBooks integration, kind of what the defaults are. We'll go through briefly where that is in QuoteWorks, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on how to actually set it up because we do have specific feature videos that will walk you through how to do that. And we can use this time a little bit more valuable if we go through on how the integrations actually work. So again, the website is great for information. If you do have questions, check it out. If not, just send us an email or give us a call. We'd be happy to help you out. So we'll go back to QuoteWorks now. So the first thing we're going to, or let's see, I got another question here. Peter asked, just starting out with QuoteWorks and QuickBooks, and basically asking if it's best to get set up with QuoteWorks first and then QuickBooks. It's really up to you. It doesn't really matter too much on the QuoteWorks side of things. It may sound like kind of like a cop-out answer, but it's the truth because for QuoteWorks, it can run independently if it needs to. We're not dependent on other systems in order to operate correctly. So if you already have QuickBooks up and running and then you add QuoteWorks to it, obviously there will be no issue. If you're getting both systems up running and you want to do one first and then the other, there's not a right or wrong way to do it. It's probably just what's going to be easier. Obviously, we would like you to have QuoteWorks set up first just because you can continue to create your sales quotes, and then once you get QuickBooks up and running, you're going to be able to take any documents that have closed and export them over to QuickBooks, but you don't have to necessarily do it in that order. It's really going to be up to you. So in order to pull items and contacts from QuickBooks, we're going to need to set up QuickBooks as our contact manager first. So you don't have to do this. Again, if you're using one of the CRM or PSAs that we integrate to, this is not a step that you're going to have to take. However, if you are interested in using QuickBooks to manage your contacts and you want to be able to pull from those contacts, you're going to need to do this. Now, as with all the integration steps in QuoteWorks and QuickBooks, you do have to have QuickBooks open and running. So just something to keep in mind that in order to write this integration, we do have to have the API up. So we do have to have QuickBooks open and running on that machine in order for QuoteWorks and QuickBooks to speak with one another and integrate. So as you can see in my taskbar, I do have QuickBooks open and running in the background. So I will be able to test out the integration features and demonstrate those today. So to set up QuickBooks to use or set up QuoteWorks to use your QuickBooks contacts, we're simply going to click on up at the top of the menu, our contacts, and then on your drop-down, set up contact manager. And then you simply would select QuickBooks as your contact manager. So if you have a different one selected, if you are using Act or Autotask or ConnectWise or CRM or whatever you're using, that's fine for your contacts. You wouldn't need to make this change. This is strictly if you want to use QuickBooks contacts. So for our purposes, we're going to go ahead and select QuickBooks and then hit OK. Now what this is going to allow us to do is when I click on my Sold to Ship to tab, and then I click on my magnifying glass here, I'm going to be able to search for a contact that's in QuickBooks and pull them into QuoteWorks. So I'm going to click on that magnifying glass, and you can see here it's going to bring up our Lookup QuickBooks contact window, and it's going to let me search by the QuickBooks customer or the job. So if I type in Aspire and hit Enter, it's going to return back all those results associated with that specific customer or job. So I'm going to go ahead and select John here, and then we'll click All just to populate all three fields. And you can see it pulled in my contact information from QuickBooks into QuoteWorks. So very easy. There's no setup involved in that. If you're wanting to pull contacts, it's as simple as going to your contacts, set up Contact Manager, selecting QuickBooks, and then moving forward and start pulling contacts from there. So now let's move if we want to pull items from QuickBooks. So if you set up your QuickBooks item list and you want to have everyone in the office, or maybe it's just you, use the QuickBooks item list. Very easy to do in QuoteWorks. It's going to be another simple setup. So we're going to click on Products, our menu option up at the top again, set up product sources, and then we're going to click New. So it's going to be Products, set up product sources, and then click New. Once you click New, you'll have your drop-down, and simply select QuickBooks from your drop-down list. So we'll just move till we find QuickBooks, select it, and then you can go through and follow the wizard the rest of the way. We'll click Next. And then this is going to bring you to the mapping. So this is how we pull this information from QuickBooks into QuoteWerks. Now, the mappings are going to be set by default, but you can change these. So if you use a different part number for your manufacturer part number, for instance, we use the full name in QuickBooks, which most programs use, but you can change it if you have specified a different field. If you wanted to use the manufacturer part number instead, or the description, maybe that's where you have your part numbers, that's what you want to map to QuoteWerks, you can do that. So you can change some of these mappings here, and this is the information we're pulling from QuickBooks. So if you have your information set up a little differently where you want to change those mappings, you can adjust that information here. We're just going to go ahead and use the default settings because that's the way we have it already set up in our QuickBooks installation. I do have a couple questions coming in, so let me back up just a moment here. Brooke has a great question asking if QuickBooks and ACT can work together as a contact manager. Brooke, you can sort of. The flow of information would be typically what we would want you to do is have your contacts set up in ACT, pull them into QuoteWerks from ACT, and then when you are ready to export that document to QuickBooks, we'll send over all that information to QuickBooks, including the contact. You have to specify in QuoteWorks what you want to use for your contact manager. So we don't typically recommend using QuickBooks for contact manager because it is an accounting software. We would prefer that you use something like ACT or a CRM or PSA that we integrate with. That's one of its primary functions is managing your contacts. So you do have that option to go from basically pull that contact from ACT into QuoteWorks, and then QuoteWorks will create that contact in QuickBooks if they don't find it. So if we don't find it in QuickBooks, we'll actually create that contact for you. I see a couple of you had the same questions where basically asking if you could pull contacts from multiple sources. You can't. You're going to only be able to pull the contacts from the contact manager. You do have the option to switch back and forth, but we don't recommend that. So we would recommend trying to get your contacts kind of all into one spot or one solution, one software that you're using, and then pull them into QuoteWorks that way, and that way it flows over to QuickBooks the way that you need it. Peter, if you have two sales reps that need QuoteWorks, that's fine. We support a network installation, so you can have multiple reps in the software at one time. The only issue is if they need any type of access to QuickBooks, they'll both need access to QuickBooks. So they'll both have to have a user login for QuickBooks. So that's why a lot of times we'll see companies set up their reps in QuoteWorks with their information, but then someone, usually the accountant or maybe like a sales manager, will be designated as the user who will export the documents over to QuickBooks. Dave's asking if he can export his products and services. I'm assuming you meant QuoteWorks, Dave. If that's not correct, just correct me. But yes, you can export your products and services out of QuickBooks into QuoteWorks if you wanted to. We do have instructions in our help file that will let you know how to import those price files into QuoteWorks. It's very easy. QuickBooks has an export to Excel function in QuickBooks, so you can export it to Excel. You save it as a CSV file, and then you can import it into QuoteWorks. It's very simple, and we have instructions that will walk you through step by step. We even have a video that will walk you through how to do that as well. Rick, if you do have questions about setting up the integration, feel free to call into sales or support. If it's just questions about kind of how to use the integration or where to set it up, we can help you. If you're having any trouble getting it set up, just call into support, and they can get you straightened out there. And Deborah's asking, when importing quotes into QuickBooks, does QuickBooks need to be in single user mode? No, when you're doing the export, it doesn't need to be in single user mode. Just when you're initially setting up the integration, you need to make sure that you are in single user mode. So that is a good question. When we actually set up the integration from QuoteWerks to QuickBooks, you need to make sure you are in that mode. All right. So again, I know a lot of you guys have a lot of questions. I'll try to get to as many as possible. If I don't get to it, I do apologize. We'll try to follow up at either the end of the meeting, or we'll have some of the sales and tech guys follow up with you guys to make sure we were able to answer all of your questions. If you have a moment, you can always send us your contact information or send an email over to sales or support at QuoteWerks.com, and we can respond to your questions there. So let's go ahead and move forward here. So this is where we can adjust those mappings. Again, it's going to be, you're probably going to use the default, but you can make some adjustments if you need to. And then once you're done, you simply click Finish, and then it's now going to show up under your product lookup screen. So if you click on the Products button here, this will actually show you your product list, and then you'll see one of them is going to be QuickBooks. So you have the option to search for any items in QuickBooks by the description or the manufacturer part number, or if you click Show All, it'll display all the items that are in that QuickBooks list. And then to add them to the document in QuoteWorks, it's very simple. You can just simply go through and select an item or two, right-click, and we can do Add Item to Quote, and they'll be added to the document. So the QuickBooks database, as far as adding items to your document, is going to work just like any other database. Again, just to reiterate, you do have to have QuickBooks open and running in order to use this. So if you have multiple reps and you're trying to keep people out of QuickBooks, your best bet would be to export your items out of QuickBooks into QuoteWorks, maintain them in QuoteWorks in a QuoteWorks database, such as like our products here, and then you can use, your reps can use that. They don't have to worry about running QuickBooks, and then you can have someone who will export the information over to QuickBooks. So let's go ahead and add just a couple more line items here to our document. We're just going to add some random ones here, and we'll add those there. And then we'll go ahead and we'll close it off here. So once we've built our document in QuoteWorks, we're ready to deliver it to the customer. So you follow your normal QuoteWorks procedures, save your document, which will let you name it. It'll assign the document number. If you're integrating with the CRM or PSA, there'll actually be another dialog box that'll show up at the bottom here that will let you create that opportunity or set a reminder, that kind of information. And then once you do that, you deliver it to the customer. The customer comes back and says, okay, we're ready to move forward. So the first thing you're going to want to do is convert this quote to an order. This does a couple of things. This is going to first close the quote in QuoteWorks. So this is an easy way to kind of keep track of your documents and your sales in QuoteWorks is by converting your documents. So you always want to make sure you do this. If you're not going to, if you don't want to convert it to an order, if you just want to change the document status manually, you can do that under the Sale Info tab. But it is much easier if you simply click on File and then Convert to Order. And again, all that's doing is that's not integrating with QuickBooks yet, but what this is doing is basically telling QuoteWorks that, hey, this quote was accepted by the customer. We want to go ahead and make this an order in QuoteWorks. And you can actually see it's going to change our document status of quote to closed and change our document status for order open. Now, if you're using Quote Valet, it'll actually prompt you when a customer accepts to convert this quote to an order automatically anyway. So it's something that you may already be seeing. But again, it just makes it very easy to keep track of those documents as they're closing from QuoteWorks. And then what this is going to allow us to do is if we want to create the purchase order, we're going to be able to now for this document because it has been converted to an order. If it was still a quote, we wouldn't be able to create the purchase order in QuickBooks. So if you do plan on using the QuoteWorks to QuickBooks purchase order integration, you will have to make sure that you are converting all your quotes to orders that are closing, or you won't be able to create that PO. That's a question that does come up a lot where users say, okay, well, I created this document for my customer. They accepted it. I wanted to go purchase it, so I clicked on purchasing, but it wasn't there. You have to convert it to an order. So it's a very simple step. And again, it's going to make managing your documents in QuoteWorks much, much simpler. So let's go to Colin's asking, can you install QuoteWorks on a server so customer can create their own quotes? Colin, you could do that. We don't necessarily recommend installing QuoteWorks where your customer can get at it just because not designed specifically for customer-facing documents. However, we do offer with Quote Valet a shopping cart functionality where you could give your customer a shopping cart page where they could go to that's online that would let them basically place their own orders, and then you would receive an email notification that they had placed an order. So we would prefer you do something like that. But you could create a user for your customer that they could log into QuoteWerks and create their own documents. It's not something that we would usually recommend because QuoteWerks isn't really designed to be customer-facing. It's usually more for internal design, but it is an option. I would, however, recommend the shopping cart. Check it out on the website. We have some information about it. If you just do a search for shopping cart on our website, you can see it. And I think that would probably work a lot better if it's going to be something kind of basic that the customer is creating, which is usually the case anyway. So once we convert our quote to an order, now we can actually export our document to QuickBooks. So we have a couple options. If we want to export our document as an estimate, sales order, or invoice, we're going to click on the QuickBooks icon. Now, if you don't have access to QuickBooks, or if you want to limit who has access to this icon, this is something that you can easily set. It's just a security setting where you can actually hide this menu option from any reps, so you don't have to worry about them if they have access to QuickBooks to start sending over documents that shouldn't be sent over to QuickBooks. So that is something that can be locked down. So if we click on QuickBooks, this is going to show us our non-exported documents for this month. So let's go ahead and just change it to today to shorten our list a little bit. And then you'll see to the right, it actually shows us display unexported orders with status equal to open. Now, I've set up this filter in my installation to only show me orders because I don't want to see quotes, because quotes may be lost. They may still be out there. So this is a good feature that you can adjust in your settings if you're trialing or you're using QuoteWerks already, is that you can actually set up a specific status and document that you want to look for. So specifically here, we're only looking for orders that are open. We're not looking for any ones that have been exported or anything like that. So this would allow me to export any of these documents. I could batch them, or I could do one at a time into QuickBooks. The first thing we want to do is let's check our settings in the QuickBooks integration. So this is how these documents are sent over. So if you're doing an estimate, sales order, or invoice, or purchase order, this is where we're going to set this information up. So let's click on Setup. Kristen, you're asking why can't you delete a duplicate order? You should be able to. It may be a function of your security rights. You may not have access to delete documents in QuoteWorks. It may just be something you want to speak with about the with your QuoteWorks admin. Rick asked, thought we were focusing on PO integration. Rick, we are going to get into that. We did actually a webinar last week that focused completely on the purchasing integration. So if you go to the website, you can actually see the purchasing integration information. But we will get to the QuickBooks PO functionality as well here in just a moment. Kristen, if you do have rights, I would just recommend contacting support and having them take a look. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like a security rights issue, but there could be something else that's locking the document or something like that. So let's go ahead and click Setup. So if you're going to change your QuickBooks integration settings, or you just need to set it up in general, this is where you're going to make those adjustments. So you can see here it's going to let you choose your transaction type, which would be invoice, estimate, or sales order, and then your job name. So obviously that's set for estimates only, so you would have to have estimates for that to work. And then this is where you can set the document numbering. So if you want to use the QuoteWorks document number, you can do that, or if you just want to continue using the QuickBooks auto numbering, you can do that as well. You can also set the date of the transaction. You can set it to the document date in QuoteWorks, which is on the Sale Info tab in QuoteWorks, or you can do it as the date exported, so the date it's actually been created in QuickBooks, which is what I would recommend since that's the date that it actually happened, the transaction happened. You can set your customer message and then some of the other information if the item does exist, if terms do not exist, that type of information. Then you'll see down here you do have your purchase order integration. So this is where you can set your purchase order integration. This is useful if you are going to use QuoteWorks in conjunction with Autotask or ConnectWise for purchase orders, but you still want to be able to create the invoice, estimate, or sales order in QuickBooks. You can adjust this setting to choose one of the other purchase order integrations. So you can do this here. You can also adjust this setting under your Tools, Options, Accounting tab. So either one. So really, this is only not going to be set to QuickBooks is if you are using AutoTask or ConnectWise to create purchase orders from QuoteWorks, and you want to use QuickBooks strictly for estimate sales orders or invoices. And then again here you can set your PO numbering default. And then this is going to be very important. If you want to be able to mark items as received in QuickBooks when you create a purchase order, you need to make sure you have this box checked. If you don't have it checked, then it's not going to update. It'll let you mark it as received in QuoteWorks, but it won't let you sync it to QuickBooks. So just make sure you set that. There are some other different mappings you can see up at the top. There's sales tax and some other various item mappings. Again, we're not going to get into that today just because we could spend 20, 30 minutes answering questions on that. But we do have videos that will walk you through how to set that up. But if you do have questions, just give us a call or send us an email. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have about that. So this is where I was talking about our kind of filter for exporting the documents. And you can see here I have it set for orders when they're equal to open. So that's just how I've set up mine in my demonstration. You could change this if you'd like. I would recommend creating some type of filter so you're not having to look through every single document that's created in your list. It's actually filtered by specific document types. And then you can set the specific document status to after it's been exported. So mine just says exported. So pretty simple. All right. So I have mine set to create an invoice in QuickBooks. So again, we can do an estimate, sales order, or invoice from this screen. So to do that, we simply select our document and then click export. So it's going to be that simple. If you want to do more than one at a time, you can do that. We're just going to do one, and we're going to export it. And it's just going to let you know that, hey, we're going to make changes. We're going to export this document. Once you do this, if you make any changes to the QuoteWorks document, it's not going to update QuickBooks. You're going to need to make any changes to that QuickBooks document. So that's something that you do want to keep in mind. So let's go ahead and export it over to QuickBooks. So it's going to run you through some prompts. Again, this is why it's going to be important for who's ever doing this export that they have some familiarity with QuickBooks, because you're going to have to be able to answer these questions and know where this information is going correctly. So for ours, we're just going to say, okay, we don't need to set a sales rep, not a big deal. And then all right, all of our items were already created in QuickBooks, so we're going to do one more because I want to try to find one where it prompts you to create the item in QuickBooks. But you can see here, so just following my instructions, all the default settings that I had. So created our invoice. It's using the QuickBooks numbering sequence, and then we could actually go into QuickBooks to view the document. So let's go view the document first. Let's go into QuickBooks. Let's go to our invoices here. And so as you can see, it's invoice number 37. And then it has our different items. Bobby, yes, you can use QuoteWorks as a standalone without QuickBooks. You don't have to integrate the two if you don't want to. It does provide a lot of functionality, but QuoteWorks doesn't require really any system to operate, so it can be used independently if you'd like. Let me see if I can get through a couple of your questions. Wendy, to get to the screen that we were just on, just click on the QuickBooks icon in the top right of your installation. Or if you click on the Tools menu option, there's an option for Export to QuickBooks, and that'll bring up that same menu. And then there's a Setup button in the left-hand corner if you're looking for the Setup screen. Hillary, yes, QuickBooks does recognize the class function. If I had an item that hadn't been previously created in QuickBooks, it would actually prompt you to select the correct accounts and information in QuickBooks. We'll do one more. Let me see if I can find one that doesn't have an item that's already been created. I think all these today. Let's do a little older one here. Try this one. I use a lot of the same items. So here we go. So this is a good example. So when you're exporting your document over to QuickBooks, if an item does not exist in QuickBooks, it's going to prompt you and say, hey, this item, this part number was not found in QuickBooks. Let's go ahead and create it. And then it's just going to prompt you. So put in your item description and then select your item type, your account. And then if it is a preferred vendor, if you want to do this item is purchased and sold, so if it's an inventory item, you can actually put that information in here. We're going to say this is a non-inventory, so we're just going to go ahead and just add it to our sales account and hit OK. And then it'll create that item. And then it's just going to keep popping up with any new item. So if you don't have all your items created in QuickBooks, that's fine. QuoteWorks is going to create them for you as it goes through. And then you can see here it's just going to walk through the rest of these and then let you know once it's done that it has been exported as invoice number 39 over to QuickBooks. John, the items are actually exported to QuickBooks as individual line items. So we do, when we create an estimate sales order invoice in QuickBooks, we are going to send the items over as individual line items. Tim kind of has a question on the kind of opposite side, is asking if you can just have it exported as one line item. You can, Tim. What you would have to do, though, is you'd have to group the items together in QuoteWorks. So if you highlight all the items in your order or your quote, whatever you're exporting, and hit Control-G, that'll group them together, and then you can just send that kind of group header line over to QuickBooks. That is a setting specifically that you'll need to make sure you set in the QuickBooks setup. So if you go into your QuickBooks, Export to QuickBooks window and click Setup, there's a specific setting for that. I'd recommend looking at the help file information on how exactly to set that up, but it is possible. All right, let me see if I can get through some of the other questions here. Again, if I didn't get to your question, I do apologize. I'll try to get to as many as possible. And it is going to support estimates, sales orders, or invoices from this screen. So if you're looking to submit your document to QuickBooks as an estimate, sales order, or invoice, this is the screen you're going to go to. So let's go ahead and decide, okay, instead of doing that, we want to send our document over to QuickBooks as a purchase order. Or we have a bunch of orders that we're ready to create in QuickBooks. So what we're going to do is instead of clicking on our QuickBooks icon, we're going to click on our purchasing icon at the top. You can also get here by clicking on the Tools button, and you'll see there's an option for Export to QuickBooks. We'll bring you on that last screen we were just on, which I believe someone else asked how we got to that window. And then also Purchasing. So you can get to Tools, Purchasing, either way. And it's just going to let you know if you do have any open documents, it's going to want to go ahead and close them just because it's going to start to make changes. So let's go ahead and bring up our Purchasing window. So the Purchasing window by default is going to show you if you had a previously open order, it's going to show you that order first. Or if you wanted to view multiple orders, they're up at the top, there's a radio button for multiple orders. So we'll go ahead and we'll click on that, which will let us make that selection. And let me see here. Brenda, I'm not quite sure I understand your question about exporting all contact emails from QuoteWorks to QuickBooks. If you can provide a little more information, I'll try to circle back to that question. So when you click multiple orders, this will show all the documents in QuoteWorks that have been converted to an order. So again, that's why it's important when your quote has been accepted or won by your customer, whatever terminology that you use, that you do click on File, Convert to Order if you plan on using this functionality. Because if you don't, it's not going to show up in this purchasing window. You won't be able to find those items to create that purchase order. So from this window, you can sort it by vendor. So let's go ahead and sort it by, we're going to do tech data, for instance, here. And this is going to allow me to create a purchase order specifically for this vendor in QuickBooks. Whether it was from one order or multiple orders, we're just going to do it by vendor. That's just a requirement of QuickBooks, so that's pretty standard across the board, is that you create a purchase order per vendor. So in order to do that, you select your vendor. You can also select customer, so if you want to narrow it down even further, you can do that. And you can change your item scope and your date. So all that functionality is going to be available for you. If you are using ConnectWise and you want to search by the ticket number that QuoteWorks created in ConnectWise, you'll be able to do that as well, where you can put in a ticket number and it'll show you the items associated with that ticket number, and then you can create purchase orders or a single purchase order if you want to, based on that ticket number, as long as they'll have the same vendor. Oh, Hillary, that's a great question. She's asking, can you lock the quote from editing once it's been converted to an order? Yes, you can. On the Sale Info tab, there's actually a lock checkbox that you can click on, and when you do that, it'll lock that document from being changed in QuoteWerks. And you'll have to have master rights or the user that locked it to unlock the document. So it's an easy way to prevent anyone from making changes to that document. Again, that's going to happen on the Sale Info tab. Peter's asking, what if you have multiple vendors to create POs for multiple items? You'll just sort by vendor. At that point, Peter, you can start with, for instance, here, Tech Data, and then if we were going to sell to, we had items from Ingram Micro, we would just set the vendor to Ingram Micro. So it's going to be by vendor. There's not a way around it just because that's how all the purchase orders integrations work, that it has to be broken down by vendor. So let's select a couple items here to create our purchase order. So we'll just select these two first items here, and then you'll see it'll let you know you have your 2 items selected, and then you can create your PO. If you are using Tech Data, Ingram Micro, Synex, or D&H, this is where you can place the order electronically. You'll see to the right there's a place online order, and then it'll create the PO. So if you wanted to place the order online with any of those vendors and then have it create the purchase order, you do have that option. If you don't want to place the online order, if you just want to create the purchase order, you simply click on Create PO. This is also the step you would use if you're using a vendor that's not supported in the online ordering. So if it's not Tech Data, Ingram Micro, Synex, or D&H, if it's any other vendor but those, it'll just have the Create PO button available. This one won't even be there. And then that'll still let you create the purchase order and export it over to QuickBooks. So let's go ahead and click on that. And this is just going to let you know, hey, we can actually place electronic orders for this vendor. Are you sure you want to just create the PO? So we want to go ahead and say yes. So now this is going to bring up our PO window field, and this is where we can put in the purchase order number. Now, if you want to use the next available QuickBooks number, just leave it blank. And you can see there's even a little message that pops up and says, hey, just leave PO number blank. If you want to use the next QuoteWerks number, click on the ellipsis button, and it'll populate your next QuoteWerks number in there. If you want to put in your own manual PO number, if you just want to type it in, simply type it in. And then you have your ref ID, which is just kind of like a reference, so you can tell yourself what it is. You know, if we want to say this is our Tech Data PO order. And then if you have any flooring account information description, you can put that information in there. Let me see here. Chris asked, how do I get my QuickBooks vendors to show up in QuoteWerks when creating a PO? You have to have, Chris, that's a really good question. You have to have your vendors set up basically in 2 spots, in QuoteWerks and in QuickBooks. So typically, your vendor information will pull from the product database in QuoteWerks. However, you can change that. In QuoteWorks, under Utilities, Vendor Maintenance, you can create all your vendors in QuoteWorks, but typically the vendor is going to be on the line item itself. There's a vendor field, and that's going to be based on wherever we pull it from, whatever database we pull it from. So if you're using QuickBooks or you're using vendor A or vendor B, if you have a database called vendor A, that's going to be the vendor information we use for your items. If you have more questions about that, just shoot us an email or give us a call, and we can go into a little more detail for you. So let's go ahead and we're going to leave it blank because we're going to use the next PO number in QuickBooks. And then if you want to create this purchase order in QuickBooks, you need to make sure this box is checked. If it's blank, that means you don't have anything set up for your purchase order integration. So if you're looking to export this to QuickBooks and you don't see anything listed here, that means you don't have it set up. Go ahead and click Cancel. Go back into QuoteWorks under Tools, Options, and then click on the Accounting tab and specify your purchase order integration. So this is going to be a little different than the accounting integration. There's just a drop down. So you'll just need to make sure you specify QuickBooks for your purchase order integration. So let's go ahead and click OK. So the first thing it's going to do is going to create our purchase order in QuickBooks, and it's going to let us know, okay, QuickBooks PO number 33 was created. And we'll hit OK. And then now we can go to our Purchase Orders tab in QuoteWorks. So this is going to show you all your open purchase orders in QuoteWorks. We're going to just go ahead and filter by date. So we're going to click on the dates and then click on Today. And then you can see here's our purchase order that we just created. So we have our 2 items, and now we can add any information. So if you're new to the screen, if you weren't within the webinar last week, we did actually walk through using the purchasing module and how you can add tracking numbers and serial numbers. So it's going to be very straightforward. If you want to put your tracking numbers for your items on here, You're going to be able to do that simply by clicking on Add Tracking Number. Select how it's sold or how it's shipped, and then you put in the tracking number information, and then you can see here it's going to show up. You can do the same thing with the serial number. So if we wanted to add a serial number, we can do that as well. And then if we, let's make this a little larger so you guys can see here. Brooke, you're asking, is create PO via purchasing in lieu of create PO via sales order in QuickBooks, or is this an additional step? This would be instead of creating the purchase order from like a sales order document or something like that, you would create the purchase order here. If you want to create the, let's say, the sales order in QuickBooks from QuoteWerks, you wouldn't come here and then create the purchase order. You would just take that sales order that we created and convert that to a purchase order at that time. So that's a good question. Basically, if you send the document over to QuickBooks as an estimate sales order or invoice, you're probably not going to send it over as a purchase order too, because then you'll have a sales order document or an invoice document and also a purchase order document. So typically you want to take that document that you already have in QuickBooks and then convert it to one of those other standards. Rick, I'm using QuickBooks Premier 2013, but we do support up to 2014 Pro Premier and Enterprise. So let's go ahead and mark this item as received. So in QuoteWorks, we can mark our items as received. Actually, I have a question. Hillary, you can add up to however many quantity-wise serial numbers you have. So for this one, I have 2. So I could actually add a second serial number if I wanted to, or I can use the same serial number for both. Obviously, it's typically going to have its own serial number, but you could use one for all of them, or you can create a serial number for each quantity that's available. Oh, the character count, I'm not sure about the character count. It's pretty large. I think it caps out at 80, if I'm trying to remember correctly. I think it's 80, and I think that is because some of the systems that we integrate to, specifically ConnectWise, they do limit that number to 80, but I think it's somewhere around there. I would contact support for those specific settings. Rick, you do have to have QuoteWorks Professional or Corporate in order to use the QuickBooks integration. I'll show you where the licensing is set up, but that is a good question because there is some information that won't come through if you're using the QuoteWorks Professional. Like you wouldn't be able to place online orders without the real-time module. You wouldn't be able to create purchase orders. You'd just be able to create those estimate sales orders and invoices. So that is a good question, but I'll show you where you can actually look that information up and compare what you have to compare what's available. I'm using QuoteWorks Corporate. So let's go ahead and receive this item. I see a lot of questions coming in, so again, I'll try to circle back to those because we're getting close to the end of the webinar here, so let me make sure we get through this, and then I'll come back and circle back to your guys' questions. So we can receive the items, and it's going to be as simple as clicking on the Receive button, and then you can put in the quantity. So if you want to record each serial number separately, just put in 1. So kind of goes back to how many serial numbers you can put in there. If you have, for instance, this one has 2, you'll want to make sure you'll do 1, and then it'll let you put in the serial number, and then you can receive the next item, put in the serial number. If you're going to use the same one, then you can change this to 2, and it'll let you put in the serial number that they're both going to share. So now that we've received this item, you'll actually see a couple different things. So the first thing you'll notice is this is letting you know that it's linked to QuickBooks. So that means we created the purchase order in QuickBooks. If you don't see that it's linked here, then that means we didn't create that purchase order in QuickBooks. It just means that we created the purchase order in QuoteWorks, just like a manual purchase order. The number 1 here is going to let you know how many items have not been sent to the accounting software. So basically, even though we received it here, we haven't synced that information into QuickBooks yet. In order to do that, we actually need to click on our Sync button here. Before we do that, there's a couple things I want to show. You'll see there's a Refresh List button. This is important because if you do make a change here, until you click Refresh, it's not going to be updated here. So if you had actually marked this item as received and synced it, but you didn't click refresh, it wouldn't show as that it had been received. So it's just something you want to keep in mind. You'll also see that it does show you that it's partial shipped, partial received, because we do have another item there. So if we click on Sync Receive Items to QuickBooks, it'll let you know there's one item ready to resync to QuickBooks, and then it'll let you say, okay, this item resync record was created in QuickBooks. So let's go to QuickBooks real quick and look at this item. Melanie, the email for support is simply support@QuoteWerks.com, and then I'll go directly to the support guys. So if we go to QuickBooks, and let's close out of here and go to our purchase orders. So this was a tech data one. All right, so there's the purchase order 33 that we created. So let's double click on that. And then you can see when we open that purchase order, it's going to let you know, hey, we received the 2, and so that item is actually closed. The other one's still open, so we haven't marked it as received or anything like that yet. And then in QuoteWorks, you'll see if we refresh it now, there's a 0 there. So that's letting you know, hey, this item was received in QuickBooks, so you don't have to worry about this one. So there's no other items to be received or to be synced with QuickBooks. So that's letting you know if it needs to be synced with QuickBooks. So this one hasn't been received, so let's go ahead and receive it. We can put in a serial number, and then that'll mark it as received, and then it lets you know with that number 1 that, hey, there's an item receipt that needs to be synced, so it hasn't been synced yet. So that's going to be important again, because if we update this, you'll see still received, that one has been received, or that one has been synced, this one hasn't been. So let's go ahead and let's sync that one. Waiting for you guys to catch up. I think my screen jumped ahead of you guys. So it's going to let you know this item receipt record was created in QuickBooks, so we can hit OK. And then we can refresh it in QuoteWorks, and then that marks it as received in QuoteWorks, and then syncs it with QuickBooks. And then in QuickBooks, you'll see here, it's going to let you know, hey, it was received in full, and it was received, so that information is available for you. And then if we go back into our QuoteWorks, the next step from here, this is something you don't have to do, but it is an option. If you right-click on your purchase order, you can actually close the PO. So if you want to remove it from this screen, basically saying, hey, it's been received, all the items have been accepted, you can close the PO, and then it's basically going to make sure, hey, do you want to make sure you really want to do that, set the date, and when you do that, if I had another PO in here, you'd actually see this is grayed out. So you can actually see that it's a closed PO. And then when I refresh, it'll be removed from my screen. If I ever need to see it, I can just go back to Include Closed POs. And that one will show it. And you'll see here how they're grayed out. That means that they have been fully received in QuoteWorks and that they have been closed. The last tab I'm going to go over today is going to be the ordered items. This is going to be where if you are searching for a specific item status, or if you want to mark items received from here, you can do that more on a per item basis rather than a purchase order basis. You can do that here. But this will let you search by the customer, by the PO number, by a specific part number. So very useful if you're looking for a specific item and you want to find that specific item or whatever purchase number it was on, you can do that. The purchase orders is going to display all your purchase orders that are still listed as open in QuoteWorks. But for any items, if you're looking for a very specific item, you can click on the Ordered Items tab and do a search for those ordered items. It does have all the same functionality as the Purchase Orders tab, so you will be able to add the tracking numbers, add the serial numbers, and mark them as received. The only thing you won't be able to do is sync them with QuickBooks, so this little icon won't be here. If you don't see this icon, it's just that checkbox when we were setting up the integration that you needed to set. So we're going to go through and let me go ahead and answer some questions because I see that they are they're pouring in. I know this is a lot of information. Let me see. Rick, that is correct. So Rick was asking, the Professional Edition only has the Purchasing tab, not the Purchase Orders or Ordered Items tab. That's correct. If you have the Professional Edition but not the Real-Time module, or and you don't have Corporate, then you won't see the Purchase Orders and Ordered Items tab. You're just going to see that Purchasing screen. if you upgraded the corporate, and it's just the difference in the license cost for anyone that is interested, if you do want the ability to submit those purchase orders and track that information, updating to the corporate edition is just a difference in your license cost. So it's $100 per license. So if there's only one or two of them, it's $200 total, or $100 total, depending on how many licenses you have. So it's pretty reasonable. But for an exact quote, just contact sales, and they can let you know how much. If we go to the website, so let's just backtrack here just for a moment, and we go to our distributor integrations and our procurement tracking. So on this page here, this actually shows you what the different versions of QuoteWerks can happen, or what they contain. So the Professional Edition is going to give you the Purchasing tab, but it will let you create the POs in QuickBooks or in Sage 50, since we're not using that in this webinar, won't matter. So you will still have that functionality. You will also have the ability to create the estimate sales orders and invoices in QuickBooks as well. So the Professional Edition includes the estimate sales orders, invoices, and to create the POs. You just won't see that purchase orders tabs or that ordered items tab in QuoteWerks. If you have the Professional Edition with real-time, so if you're working with the IT distributors like Tech Data, Ingram Micro, Cinex, D&H, you will receive that purchase orders tab, the ordered items tab. So that means that you will be able to create those manual POs, and you'll still have the ability to create the POs in QuickBooks. You'll also be able to place the electronic orders. So you'll be able to actually place the orders electronically with those distributors because you do have the real-time module. The Corporate Edition is going to give you basically all the functionality that we've talked about here. The only one you won't have is placing electronic orders because you need real-time for that. But this will give you everything that I showed you today. So it'll show you the Purchasing tab, the Ordered Items tab, the Purchase Orders tab, creating the QuickBooks POs, and also syncing the item receipts to QuickBooks. Or if you're using ConnectWise and Autotask and you want to be able to sync those items and mark them as received in those systems, you'll have that functionality. So I'll send this link. I'll make sure I include this link in the email out to everyone that has the webinar video, so you can see which version of QuoteWerks you have and what's available for you. Jason, great question. Jason asked, will QuickBooks received items reflect in QuoteWerks? They will not. If you receive an item in QuickBooks, it won't reflect in QuoteWorks. But what you can do is, if you have an item that you received in QuickBooks manually, maybe you're just already in QuickBooks and you know it showed up, or it's your inventory, you're keeping track of it through QuickBooks, what you can do in QuoteWorks is right-click on that item and click as Mark Item Receipt as Exported to Accounting. That means that you're basically saying it was received in your accounting software already, so you don't have to worry about running the sync or anything like that. So if you did that, if you click this, when you go to click on your item sync button, it won't show up because it's going to say, oh, this one was already marked as received. And you'll actually see, let me see if I have one related to QuickBooks here. Well, this one's already been updated, but it'll be set as 0. So that'll tell you if it's been marked as received in QuickBooks. And then if you need to just manually mark it as received, just right-click and click on the Mark Item Receipt as Exported to Accounting. So I think that's all the functionality for today. I'll hang around for a few minutes and answer some of your guys' questions. If I didn't get to a question from earlier, please send us an email or send over your contact information. I'll make sure someone reaches out to you and we get those questions answered. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to sit in on this today. So if you do have any questions, let us know. If not, have a great day.